All right. Greetings. Welcome back to Blackburn News, where everything is connected. Excuse me. Greetings, everyone. Good to see you all. We're live on Rockfin, YouTube, and Callin. And the address right here, the Cash App address you see on your screen is my favorite way for you to support the show if you so choose to. All right. Hello, everyone. Greetings. We're here live. People here. Very good. I was late, Scott, but now I'm here. Sorry about that. All right. Well, let's just jump into it. We're also live on Callin. Did I say that too? We're live on Callin. First of all, I have to actually correct myself, and I want to thank Richard McCluskey for pointing something out to me last night, which I actually kind of spied a little bit when I was going back through the temperatures of Portland yesterday. So I have to correct myself. Whoa, that was weird. What's going on? I suddenly couldn't hear myself. Sorry about that. Something weird is happening here. I'm not sure. Or I'm losing my... either my headphones are not working or my mic is not working. I don't know which one. Sorry. Anyways, we're back. Anyways, what Richard McCluskey pointed out to me, and then I did a whole dive like late last night looking at temperatures and stuff. So 100 degrees is actually, it is not anomalous for Portland, Oregon. However, it is still fairly rare. But there are several years in Portland's history where they reached 100 degrees. However, so I just wanted to state that for the record, that I was assuming that Portland's weather was literally a carbon copy of Seattle's, and that was a bad assumption on my part. So I just want to correct that record, because I believe they're a little more inland than Seattle is right on the coast, and so maybe that's why. Well, let me show you something, just to show you what I was looking at. Oh, can't show you that. Still doesn't really change anything regarding temperatures going up. Why? I'll explain why. But highest temperatures for each year in Portland for the last decade or so. There were a few hundreds, 104s, and then 114 last year. Definitely anomalous. So, that one sticks out. But there were several hundred degrees through, the last century in Portland. So, as high as 107 in 1942, which is pretty high. But definitely 114, kind of off the rails, hot. Well, here's the thing about going back and looking through high temperatures. High temperatures are what, yes, they are high temperatures, and they happen all, through climatic history, but there's also another metric is how many days over 90 degrees, how many days over 80 degrees, right? And so I was showing temperatures of Sevilla, Spain. And they're having, they set a record for most days in a month of, over what was it, 40 degrees, which is super hot, over 100 and whatever it is, 2 degrees Fahrenheit. They set a record for a month. So, again, record breaking temperatures, 114, definitely a record breaker. So, that is highly anomalous, 114, super high, definitely anomalous. very, very extremely hot, record-breaking heat. So true on the record-breaking part, and also true as I was looking back through the data. What I saw, through the years was like, yeah, okay, so they would reach 90 degrees or 100 degrees on any particular day. But it was, as you go later in the data, what you find is that there are more days over 90, more days over 80. There were entire rows. And then the anomaly for this year is that in 1 month, there were a lot of days over 90 in Portland. Maybe I can find that quickly. I think I have it. Which, don't know if it's record breaking or not, but seems to be on an uptrend. So what I was looking through temperature data, what I noticed was that there were more days over 80, more days over 90 as you get later, as we get into more recent history, right? And so in this last month in Oregon, lots of days over 90 for one, quite a few days over 90. So that is anomalous, or that is different. Maybe not anomalous, but maybe that's not a good word, but different. And then you also have this entire week, an entire week of over 90s and in 300-degree days in 1 week. That is definitely an indicator that things are getting warmer. So there you go. If you wanted to go back through the calendar and pick out how many days hit 100 degrees in Portland, Oregon's history, I'm sure you probably wouldn't find 3 days in a row or 3 days in 1 week, and you probably be hard pressed to find an entire week over 90 degrees. That indicates that there's something going on. And then you have a month with, I'm gonna say there's quite a few days over 90 in 1 month. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, well, just over a month, 14 days on this particular calendar span. So that's a lot of days. G. Demarest says Lytton, British Columbia, Canada hit 49.6 C on 29th of June, 2021. Hottest ever anywhere in Canada, going as far back as the data goes. Yeah. So just wanted to clarify what I was saying, and I apologize for, assuming something that I knew something that I didn't know. But still doesn't necessarily say, well, that blows the case. Again, because not only did Portland and Seattle have super anomalous high temperatures, and Lytton, British Columbia last year, but all over the world, right? We're seeing England, we're seeing other places having super, super duper high temps, more days over, and even, Phoenix, Arizona. Yeah, hot place. They've had high temperatures, through their history, right? A recorded history of temperatures. They get really hot. But the thing to know, here's another metric, I guess, that other people are not taking into consideration if you're talking about temperatures. What's the highest low temperatures, right? Where are the low temperatures going down to, right? So you might have your highs compared to what your lows are, but as the lows continue to get higher too, that is also, can you stop? There's also, sorry. So I turned my phone off. That's weird. Turned my phone off and it's still ringing. G. Demarest says Phoenix had to shut down their reactor as it was too hot to run a nuclear reactor, right? Well, there's a lot of nuclear reactors being shut down. Why? Because the water is too warm to actually cool the reactors. That's not good. That's not good. So again, I'm saying this mainly because if somebody wants to point out my discrepancy. It doesn't actually prove like nothing's happening. It doesn't disprove global warming, and I'm not trying to lie to you, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. That's why I'm trying to show you this. Interesting stuff, actually, to me. I was just like, oh, okay. I like learning things. Here at Seattle, so 100 degrees, very abnormal in Seattle. I don't know if you can see this. Very, very abnormal in Seattle. So over the last 100 years, there's like 2 days, not in the last decade, that went up to 100 degrees. And then last year, 108. So very, again, super, super duper hot. And that's also something that people talk about when they talk about global warming, is that it's, obviously it's a slow creep. It's a slow creep. But what you have doing is, as the average temperature of the planet, goes up, and it seems very incremental and very small, and like, oh, that's, sea level rise is rising by millimeters a year. Oh, people might point to that and go like, that's not anything. But what that does is raise the possibility of the extremes being more extreme, right? So when you get to those anomalous, in Seattle, anomalous day, super anomalous day, or out of regularity might hit 100, right? But then, so you get to the super anomalous day in 2021, and it's 8 degrees hotter than that, right? So the next time Seattle hits a super anomalous day, is it going to be 115 degrees? Is it going to be 120 degrees, right? And that is also the same for anywhere, Southern California, Phoenix, anywhere. As the average temperatures start getting higher, you increase the ability of the anomaly to go way off the map, like London, right? The average temperatures in London are just slowly creeping higher, and then you get to 2022, and they hit 100 and whatever it is, 40 C for the first time. So that's what global warming creates. Anyways, I just want to clear that up and talk about that a little bit. But now, now I know some things. That's good. I'm capable of assuming things. I'm a human being. And I think people assume stuff until the day they die, right? Assume things are a certain way. And you go, oh, yeah, okay. I didn't know that. Maybe I'll adjust. All right. I'm going to read this or go through this a little bit. I actually ran out of time yesterday, and I wanted to cover this from Umair Haq. And he has an article called "In the Age of Extinction: Our Economies Evolve or Die." And I find this to be an interesting, I read through this a little bit. Economies of the future are here, and they suck. Just, he's kind of mapping out a little bit about the great confusion that we're going to enter, because people are going to be really confused about, what's happening. They're going to be confused about what's happening, and then they're going to be confused about what to do about it. And so that's already starting. That's already happening right now. Like, what's going on? I don't know. What do we do about it? And it seems that the powers that be are pointing us in obviously pointing us in the wrong direction, because whatever benefits them is what they're going to point us towards. And whatever benefits them generally isn't the best thing to do. And so that leaves the people that are not in the powers that be club to try and hash it out themselves. And then that gets really weird, because that is a divide too. That's, people are divided along the lines of like, climate change is real, it's really happening, and it's really bad, and it's a total hoax meant to control your life. And that's actually a pretty big, that us versus them kind of thing, right? Where it is, we are inheriting the future of the planet, all of us together. And but right now, everybody's arguing about who's right, who's on the right side of what. So it pits people against each other. Unfortunately, those narratives, those conflicting narratives. We're going to do something dangerous. Are you ready? We're going to talk like adults. Check your Marvel fandom at the door. And what are you, 12? Sorry, I guess you're already mad at me. Good, because it's only about to get worse. Nobody is going to like the economics of the future. What do I mean by that? Here's a tale of three economies. In the UK, Keir Starmer, the head of the opposition to Boris Johnson's party of oafs, clowns, and suspiciously inhuman-seeming orc leaders. Okay, I really don't like when people refer to right-wingers as orcs or, inhuman or subhuman. I know. We all say the things that we say in order to prove a point. I get it, but it's just, I'm guilty of it as well, but let's try not to disparage people as being like not human or less than human or something. Anyway, seemingly just announced Q groans of disappointment from everyone, saying that he wouldn't be pursuing renationalizing transport and utilities. That's interesting. Not be pursuing renationalizing. So their transport and utilities are currently nationalized. And this is the issue. I've been talking a little bit about this. This issue of privatization and how it's destroying everything, right? The American government is completely captured. Why? Because of corporations. And because we allowed them to. We allowed them to, and we allowed them to due to the fact that we had people, pushing, into our brains, punching into our brains that government is bad. We shouldn't regulate anything. It's bad for business. It's bad for people. We should, we should get out of people's business. Social welfare nets are bad. They're for you know what I mean? The whole right-wing / libertarian ideology that so many people, love to love. has created the conditions so that the government can go, let's yank these, regulations, because it seems like that's what everybody wants, right? They're echoing a manufactured consent on some level. But I bet the people of England don't want to lose their health care and don't want to lose their transportation and their utilities, I bet the people of England won't be happy when private companies run those things. In France, meanwhile, the government has just renationalized EDF, or the Électricité de France, explicitly to prepare the nation for an era of, this climate catastrophe, skyrocketing energy prices, conflict over basic resources. And in America, the idea of renationalization is so far off the table, it might as well be on Mars. That is true. That is true. I mean, the conversation is just super dumb here. We are extremely right-wing. We are an extremely right-wing country, and we're acting like the extreme right-wingers are only the Republican Party, and that's absolutely not true. We're extremely right-wing compared to the rest of the world. And it's probably going to get worse, because I don't see anybody out there going like, how about some social welfare programs? How about some regulation of industries that are destroying the planet? Oh my God, what are you, a eugenicist, climate changer, crazy WEF creep? That's how that conversation is unfolding in the next few months, by the way, or years. Already unfolding right now. What does that have to do with economics of the future? Everything. Take a look around. Extinction is here. These last few summers, they'll be remembered as the era when climate change suddenly became real. Something you could experience with your own body. Oh, we were just talking about that. Observational data. not just read about it in some abstract theory about some far-off future. You could feel the heat. First came what's now known as the Australia's Black Summer, when megafires ravaged it. Then came the summer California caught fire, then the one where Europe burned, and London was one gust of wind or three away from another great fire. Meanwhile, the ice sheets collapsed, animals fled to the poles, crops began to fail, and water began to run dry. That's a lot. A lot of what? Our basic systems are failing. It's not a joke. It's not a drill. Even if the New York Times will call it hyperbole today and then cry about it 5 years from now when it's even more painfully obvious it's real. I mean, there are still, by the way, quite a few articles that come out saying, like, I don't know about this climate change thing. I can't tell you what that's driven by. I mean, some people may actually believe that, and some people may be operatives. I don't know. I don't know who it is and who is not, but some might be a little more obvious than others. When it's real, our basic systems, food, water, energy, medicine, they are all beginning to buckle, break, and shatter. It's not going to stop. Do you think the planet's magically going to cool down? Some people do, I guess. The same kinds of people that think COVID is a hoax. All right, well, no. We're going to record scratch on that one there, Umar. And COVID actually is a real virus, by the way. I want to say that COVID actually, people get COVID. I've gotten COVID, so it actually is a virus that exists. About the other things, we'll leave that for another conversation at the end of the show. This is the future now. Our planet heats up far more rapidly than expected, and our civilization hits boiling point. I mean, I guess that in that light, COVID and climate change are somewhat similar in the fact that they are actually things that exist. They do what they do. And the information around them is extremely muddled and confused and like, I don't know what to believe. What do I believe? I don't know. And that way they are kind of similar. This is the future now. Our planet heats up far more rapidly than expected, and our civilization hits boiling point. Our basic systems collapse, and they take democracy with them, by way of taking sanity, prosperity, trust, and replacing them with spite, hate, fear, rage, and the demagogues feeding on it all, scapegoating innocence for the apocalypse descending on us all. Let me say it once again, because I don't think people understand this enough. Our basic systems are beginning to fail, and they're not going to stop. The water isn't magically going to reappear. That's true. The crops aren't magically going to plant themselves and grow in the dust where there used to be fields. The livestock, already stressed by heat, isn't going to magically dust itself off and stride joyfully through the meadows again. The raw materials of the earth are ever harder to obtain, and good luck mining, shipping, and manufacturing them in a planet of megafires, megafloods, pandemics, and demagogies. We are reaching the critical tipping point of system failure, and it's empirically observable now, and everything from the increasingly stunning rates of crop failures to the way that drought and fire are now widespread, to the way that famine is on the cards, to the way pandemics are a trend, not an anomaly. Again, I don't know. I won't even go into the whole... I'm not going to go down that road right now, but maybe later in the show. How do we deal with that as a civilization, as societies? This is the part nobody's going to like. We need to build systems again, systems that last for a millennium, not just a century. Let me give you an example that illustrate what I mean. This is where I get a little dubious about this, but how did the American West become habitable in the modern sense? Was it guns? Did angels descend? Was it because women and minorities didn't have rights? Hello, the Hoover Dam was built and it created reservoirs like lake mead. All right, this is where Umar Haq, it kind of doesn't really, it kind of shows that he's not very, he's versed on climate change, but then not versed on some levels, right? Because he's talking about building big old infrastructure to help people survive against climate change. And how do we get to this problem in the first place? Infrastructure, industrial civilization. What is industrial civilization? Infrastructure. Lots of it. We are enjoying the fruits of infrastructure right now. Infrastructure that is going to have a harder time operating because of weather extremes, et cetera, et cetera. And there's what is involved in building all the infrastructure. Lots of CO2, lots of emissions, lots of shipping, lots of manufacturing, lots of, again, I don't know. I don't know about this. Maybe I'm wrong. Perhaps I am wrong and completely, on the wrong track of this. But I can't see. This is also the issue with electric or renewable energy or electric cars saving the planet. You're gonna build a bunch of things in order to stave off the effects of the things that are happening because we built a bunch of things. So do you understand that? Is that I think that's what I'm trying to say. You're staving off the things that are coming to us because we built a lot of things, and you're going to do that by what? Building a lot of things? Okie dokie. Maybe if you build fast enough, we'll just build faster and faster and faster, and we'll outbuild all the things that are about to happen to us. But, what he's saying isn't really great, but I get kind of the gist of what he's saying. What he's saying is we have to do something pretty bold and creative in the face of climate change, and I guess, sure. The Hoover Dam was built and it created reservoirs like Lake Mead. Suddenly the American West had something modern civilization needed in abundance, the basics, water and power. Without that, cities from Las Vegas to LA could scarcely exist, and neither could really California's modern agricultural industry, which is America's breadbasket. What created the Hoover Dam? The New Deal did. America's, to this date, largest wave of investment. Yeah, the New Deal was super cool. I'm just going to say the New Deal was super cool, and people still love the things that the New Deal brings, like welfare and like Social Security and like Medicare. I mean, I know some of those things were they were enacted on the back of the New Deal, right? Later and during like Lyndon Johnson's era. Some of these things came a little bit later, but these were like building blocks of like democratic socialism-ish kind of society that was better for people all around. And we also had at one point, a 90% tax rate on the uber wealthy, 70% later, a little later. And those tax rates helped keep everything a little more fair. Now those things are gone, and now we live in an age of ever increasing disparity between the rich and the poor. Now the Hoover Dam has lasted about a century. That's a long time to us. It's much, much longer than most things in our disposable throwaway lives and cultures last. Movies, songs, TVs, phones, books. And the truth is that it was built to last about that long. Even the mighty Hoover Dam can't power or water the West on its own. What's the lesson here? Our basic systems are built to last tops about a century, but now we need to think on a very, very different scale. We need systems that can last a millennium. Maybe permanent systems, as in ones that last into deep time, which is what sustainable really means. I get where he's going. There's a very simple reason for that. This is extinction. If we don't build systems that last more than a century this time around, then it all just happens all over again. And that's if there's anything left. A century from now, the cycle recurs, broken systems for water, energy, food, medicine, and so on. But worse, because now the planet's permanently altered in far more inhospitable ways. Building short-term systems on a dying planet. Are you kidding me? That's like, I don't know, sighing and doing your makeup for Instagram while in an entire clown car. Okay, whatever. Umair is clearly very much in the blue MAGA realm on something, so it's fine. We're reading this for climate change and not necessarily anything else. Or I am. Short-term systems on a dying planet don't work. We need to build systems for a horizon. How do we do that? He's going to tell you what isn't going to work. Okay. What's not going to work is building the systems we need for basics privately, as in the corporate route. Here, I agree. That's right. I actually am of the mind that corporations need to go away, that they need to be nationalized and turned to dust. And if some of them are just giving us basic needs like food and clothes, very basic needs, then they should be allowed to exist, but they will be nationalized and not for profit. I know it sounds like super commie, super pinko of you, bro. But that's the only way it's going to happen. And everyone, from left to right would say that sounds like eco-fascism. I don't know what to call it, but some kind of response needs to happen, if there is going to be one, and probably not. Yes, interglacial optimist. I love that quote from Blade Runner. All lost like tears in rain. Very good. Every American dude right now wants to throw the textbook of internet crackpot economics at me. And yet the sad truth is that they're the ones whose lives have been wrecked by the privatization of basic systems. Right. That's right. That's absolutely right. That's correct. We are in this mess. We are in this ever deepening whirlpool of doo-doo because everything privatized because the corporations have taken control of the media. I told you that regulations are bad. And then they take over the institutions that are supposed to regulate your things to keep you healthy and safe. That's all, completely bunged. And it's very insidious, and great job on their part, insidious and effective. There is a whole army of people on the internet saying, telling you how socialism is so super bad and just regulations are just super bad and the government's just super bad and we can't control anything and we have no agency and we're just going to let it get worse as we go down the whirlpool of doo-doo. Anyways. And so, why do Americans work so much? Because they're always in debt. Why are they always in debt? Because they don't make enough to pay the bills. Why don't they make enough to pay the bills? Because the goddamn bills are too high. And why are the bills too high? Because in America, all basic systems, more or less, are private. And so Americans get fleeced in ways that shock the rest of the world. You know the score. All my European friends ask me constantly, and so do my Asian ones, do Americans really get health care bills that cost more than a home? I nod. But how can that be? They ask, aghast. In our countries, all of them, healthcare is mostly free. I shrug and explain to them the old story, which we should have all learned in Econ 101. The private sector can't solve problems of public goods. This is why it's so bonkers to me, the narrative that I just described of, libertarianism is like we already lived in that world. We had an entire, uprising of people, and we had an entire historical epoch happen where they were like, yeah, we're going to have to do something about these capitalists, taking everything from people and running child slave labor into the ground for pennies a day. That already happened in history, but apparently people want to see it happen again. Why not? Because the private sector has little incentive to do much but fleece. It's driven by the profit motive. Remember, that's how it works. Just how it is. No matter what noble sentiments and proclamations may surround it, at the end of the day, that poor bastard of a CEO trying to be some kind of world-saving Mother Teresa has to go and report back to a 26-year-old hedge fund manager who's the son of some other sociopath who also went to Yale and never did a goddamn thing in his life except figure out how to make money and do even more money. That's good. So there's the CEO eating crow for trying to do the right thing. Can't be done. It can in small ways, but in systemic ones, forget it. Using the private sector to solve problems of public goods, the corporations will have to work in new ways to save the planet, right? As Klaus Schwab said, it's all corporations, private sector, that we're going to save the planet. That is a problem. The private sector, using the private sector to solve problems of public goods is like trying to use a sledgehammer to compose an opera. You might even think you succeed, but dude, the audience is running out of the theater clutching their ears in pain and screaming. The story's the same everywhere, literally, it's ever been tried. Remember poor gutless Keir Starmer, the head of Britain's opposition? Yeah, he's talking about what I just... it was Britain... it was in Britain that the rail was famously privatized, only for fares to rise by eye-popping amounts. Right. In America, when and where energy has been privatized, the results have ranged from comical to lethal. Texas privatized its energy grid, and people froze to death when it failed. All our basics are public goods: water, air, food. Water, air, food, energy, medicine, even a bit of money. Public goods just mean stuff we want everyone to have because we're all better off that way. Why am I... that socialism, and on top of that, the police and the firemen are it's socialist, right? We don't hire private police and I mean, some people do, but private police and private fire people to put out our fires, and those are socialist programs, and we give them lots of money. We fund them up the wazoo because we need them, or so they say. Not so much. Not talking about firemen so much as more so police, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with public necessities being provided publicly and not privately, but we have been duly and effectively brainwashed by a lot of people. It has been a really amazing thing to witness. Why am I better off when you have clean water so I don't get cholera? Duh, but I am better off when you have food and a bit of money. Why am I better off when you have food and a bit of money so you don't turn into a lunatic or a fascist, starved into lunacy, hate, or spite, seeking vengeance on scapegoats? Medicine so you stay healthy and I don't catch something from you, and so on, right down to the even more, or medicine to stay healthy so you don't go into medical bankruptcy. And nobody likes to be sick and be, perpetually sick and have to go to the doctor or have to be on prescriptions for, medicines that are poorly regulated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All our basics are public goods, and the problem is that the private sector has no incentive to provide them at the scale people need, just to profiteer by undersupplying them or supplying toxic ones, which happens by underinvesting in them. Why did Texans die in the freeze? The energy grid failed. Why did the energy grid fail? Because the private sector underinvests and cuts corners so it can reap maximum profit. C, P, G, and E also for their power line snafus that caused some really damaging fires in California. You can see the same story at work in the dismal tale of COVID. Well, he starts talking about COVID, but I don't want to get into that right now. Anyways, I don't think I'm going to read the rest of this because I have other things to talk about. But I see where he's going. I don't know how we're going to build millennia, things that last millennia when we probably won't be here for millennia or even a century. But I wouldn't even, I would suggest not building things quickly. Unbuilding things very quickly, unbuilding our civilization, the things that are toxic very quickly, keeping a few positive things around, or very, very necessary things around, but mostly unbuilding most of what we've already built. Just my ideas about it, but let's move on. He's getting there. Again, the entire conversation about what's going to happen? What are we going to do? I mean, there's going to be a lot of ideas put out there, a lot of possibly not so very good ideas out there. Probably more bad ideas than good. And the good ideas, nobody's going to like those good ideas because those good ideas are gonna look like not so comfortable. Oh, I was doing a little more other just random searching on the internet last night and this morning about, you know, a lot of people are saying like, the climate thing was a made up thing. The climate thing is a hoax that somebody made up in order to control you. But the reality is that, and I've been talking about this for many days as well, is that an entire corporation, or corporate entity, I guess, I don't know what you want to call it, an entire industry bent on polluting the planet while profiteering off you, really went to great lengths to water down information about climate change and about when it would happen or how bad it would get. Why do you think they did that? I don't know. Take a guess. And this is also why we're in the predicament that we're in, because everybody's confused about what's going on. Why? Because the fossil fuel industry had billions and billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars to spend misinforming you or redirecting your attention about what was going on. And also buying, people like to say, oh, they're buying off the climate scientists to tell you that climate change is real. No, actually, the thing that really happened was they bought off climate scientists to tell you that it wasn't that bad. True story. They watered down climate reports so that they could tell you it wasn't that bad or it wasn't a real thing. That is historically factual. Many of these. I'm going to show you just a couple and just kind of quickly skip through the headlines, but there's a million instances of this. James Hansen, the original working groups around climate change from the 70s through like the 80s, were all they were discussing climate change and how bad is it and what do we do about it and all that stuff. And some of the scientists in those groups were bought off by oil companies to negate some of the points or water down some of the points, because we don't want it to be too bad. We don't want to scare people. We don't want people to stop buying our product. Just like, and that goes all the way back to lead in gasoline. Right? Lead was poisoning the planet. Scientists found this out, and there was a company that went after the scientists that were trying to sound the alarm on this. They went hard on these scientists because they didn't want anybody to disclose that they were poisoning the planet and poisoning people and poisoning everything with their leaded gasoline. And it took a really long time to get that lead out of the gasoline, a really long time, considering it was discovered, I don't know, was it the 40s or 50s or maybe even earlier, but it took them until the 90s to get, ultimately get the gas out of lead, get the lead out of gasoline, excuse me. So corporate malfeasance coming to poison a town near you. White House watered down climate reports. This is from 2005. Official with ties to oil industry and no scientific background involved in rewrites of climate reports. This is during the Bush era. And famously, George W. took all the electric cars off the road because we don't want any of that hippy dippy new age stuff. Like Reagan took the solar panels off the White House because we don't want any of that hippy dippy, newfangled thinking stuff. We want this old school. We want this cheap, reliable energy called gasoline. The White House was accused of politicizing research into climate change yesterday after it emerged that an official with ties to the oil industry rewrote reports to play down links between greenhouse gases and global warming. Let's keep going. Here's one from 2015. Exxon knew about climate change 40 years ago. A new investigation shows the oil company understood the science before it became a public issue, and spent millions to promote misinformation. That misinformation is still being recycled to this day. Over and over and over again, people keep on repeating this information that was funded by the fossil fuel industry. So Exxon was aware of climate change as early as 1977, 11 years before it became a public issue. This knowledge did not prevent the company, now ExxonMobil and the world's largest oil and gas company, from spending decades refusing to publicly acknowledge climate change and even promoting climate misinformation, an approach many have likened to the lies spread by the tobacco industry regarding the health risks of smoking. Sorry, I'm just showing you that briefly, and then I'll show you something else. It goes on and on. Oh, this one. I think this is more on the same 2005 story about anyways, the documents they're referring to that were watered down, printed in the New York Times, show handwritten notes by Mr. Cooney deleting paragraphs and editing others drafted by government scientists. So the government scientists were like, hey, this is a serious problem. And somebody in the George W. Bush administration said, we're going to delete those things. Because it's not real. I said so. Didn't I just say there was someone else who worked for, was it, I don't know what company. I think it was last year. There was a video going around of somebody who worked for a oil company that said, like, yeah, we acknowledge that climate change is real, but we also he just admitted that they funded skepticism, climate skepticism. We try to get people confused about what to think about it. Man, I wish I knew where that video was. I just realized, or just remember that. And then obviously, very famously also, right? Again, the Paris Agreement is a joke to some people, and it's a joke to a lot of people on the left and the right. But, to the climate change is a hoax people, it's a big old joke, and this is a plan to destroy your life and something. But what was also true about this Paris Agreement is that the oil industry was involved in watering down the Paris Accords, in watering down the severity of the problem, and also for getting carbon credit, the idea of carbon credits shoved in there, right? So carbon credits, all that stuff is just absolutely nonsense. Carbon credits are not going to save the planet and not going to absolve corporations from destroying the planet. But and this was an idea by an oil industry lobbying, right? So how oil companies are still undermining the Paris Agreement. This is 2018. Anyways, at a side event organized by the International Emissions Trading Association, a business lobbying group, Shell's chief climate change advisor said the company could take some credit for the inclusion of Article 6 in the Paris Agreement, a critical provision of the accord which enables countries to trade emissions reductions via, say, carbon markets. We put together a straw proposal. Many of the elements of that straw proposal appear in the Paris Agreement, etc. So Hone went on to say that the corporation had been chatting with delegations in Cotoise, indicating the industry giant could be influencing the negotiations once again. We put together another straw proposal for the rule book, and we saw some of that appear in the text. So basically, they're adding text. The oil industry is adding text to the Paris Agreement in order to what? In order to take the teeth out of it, or put something that is not helpful to the climate in it, or water down the actual severity of it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Anyways, greenwashing, I guess, is what it's called. Some people would call it that. Man, I always run out of time. Let's go to this. I need to cover this before I sign off for the day. Air pollution is causing dementia. UK government advisors acknowledge decades-old link for the first time. I wonder why it took them so long to acknowledge it, right? It's a decades-old link. No, this is not trying to, we're blaming things on climate change. No, they're actually, or blaming things on pollution or something. Pollution is actually bad for people, right? Last I heard. And we in Western societies could actually be glad that we live in much cleaner environments than we used to, 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. That we don't drive around belching lead into the air. We can be happy about that because somebody decided to regulate that, much to the chagrin of corporations, right? Toxic airborne particles I'm going to read this. Air pollution is fueling a rise in dementia, the UK government has acknowledged for the first time. Toxic airborne particles from cars. If you remember, lead was fueling was fueling like mental instability and violence. That was actually a byproduct of all the lead poisoning that was going on. When they stopped putting lead into gasoline, rates of violence went way down, a big curve down. So it was, pollution can produce all kinds of things. And it also, people that spend a lot of time in high CO2 areas also are cognitively impaired. In other words, you get dumber if you spend a lot of time sucking in the beautiful wafting CO2, the plant food that everybody loves. Toxic airborne particles from cars and fossil fuels have long been associated with rapidly increasing rates of the disease in the UK and the developed world. Now a major independent review has confirmed the link after analyzing dozens of human studies. The researchers concluded it was likely that air pollution can contribute to a decline in mental ability and dementia in older people. They believe the primary way this happens is by tiny toxic particles seeping into the bloodstream after being breathed into the lungs. The pollutants then irritate blood vessels and disrupt circulation to the brain. Over time, this can lead to vascular dementia. It is also likely that in rare cases, very small air pollution particles can pass the blood-brain barrier and damage neurons directly. This does not seem to be an important mechanism at the level of air pollution currently in the UK, but this does not seem to be an important mechanism at the level of air pollution currently in the UK, the report found. That's interesting. That is interesting. While a link has been established, there is not enough evidence yet to say how many dementia cases are a result of air pollution. Some studies have suggested that up to a fifth of patients, but I guess if you're talking about air pollution in other countries where the particulates are there are a lot of particulates in the air, and right? Say India or China. Some studies have suggested up to a fifth of patients with the disease are linked to exposure to toxic pollutants. A 290-page report was carried out by the Committee on the Medical Effects of Air Pollutants, led by the Imperial College London's Professor Frank Kelly. It has been known for decades that air pollutants can contribute to heart disease, strokes, and other circulatory issues by making blood vessels narrower, and harder. Scientists had theorized this process could also lead to vascular dementia, which is caused by damage to the blood vessels in the brain and is the second most common form of disease after Alzheimer's. Writing in the report, the researchers said the evidence for this had become stronger over the past 15 to 20 years. They concluded, we think there is a strong case for the effects of air pollutants on the cardiovascular system having a secondary effect on the brain. We think it likely that such effects have an effect on the blood supply to the brain, that such an effect might well lead to damage to the brain seems to us likely. We therefore regard the association between exposure to air pollutants and effects on cognitive decline and dementia as likely to be causal with respect to this mechanism. The most dangerous type of air pollution is known as PM 2.5. Again, those are larger or smaller, excuse me, which have a diameter of less than 2.5 micrometers across. That is 1/400th of a millimeter, or about 3% of the width of a human hair. Some scientists believe PM 2.5 can also have a direct effect on the brain by traveling straight from the lungs to the brain via the bloodstream. So again, you know, if you're one of the, I don't like, those regulations are bad. I want these regulations to go away. What is this, all this regulation stuff? They want to control us. I don't know. Maybe it's good to not be driven mad by pollution, breathing in pollutants. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. The researchers did find, however, that once in the brain, the particles are cleared only slowly, if at all. I don't know. This is a weird report, though, because they kind of actually draw an inconclusive, you know, they said, well, maybe not at the levels in England is this worrisome. So that's interesting. In animal studies, diesel engine exhaust has been shown to create an inflammatory response in the brain and damage cells, but it's unclear how this translates to humans. Okay, we regard the current evidence base as inadequate for direct quantification of the effects of air pollutants on cognitive decline or dementia. Why are they contradicting themselves? I don't know. It comes as the government today invited councils across England to bid for funding from a £7 million pot to find innovative ways to improve the air quality in their areas. The air quality grant will go towards implementing measures that benefit schools, businesses, and communities impacted by high levels of pollution. Areas can only qualify if air pollution levels exceed UK targets. And they're planning on slashing maximum permissible levels of PM 2.5. Interesting. Well, that's interesting because they say there's a definite link. Study, and then somewhere in there they're like, but we can't actually directly attribute it to this. So weird. I know though that breathing in air pollution is bad for you. So I don't know. I do know that as a child, I breathed in a lot of air pollution. It hurt my lungs and my eyes and my brain. So less air pollution in the air is a good thing. All right. But it's good to read the whole articles, right? So you can get these contradictory statements in the same article. I don't know. Okay. That does it for me, guys. Thank you so much for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I appreciate you all hanging out with me every day on the YouTube, the Rockfins, and the call-in app. Let's see. I'm going to read a couple of comments before I go. From North on Colin says, which is more likely? Solar industry bought off over 1 million scientists to fake innate change, or billionaire oil companies bought off a couple of hundred scientists to say CC is a hoax? Yeah. Dare Bear says, yo, how about bringing back FDR era programs like the Civilian Conservation Corps? Yeah. Works Progress Administration. Sure. I mean, I think a really great way to combat climate change, and this would be wacky to most people, but you create a core of people that go out into the land. Well, first of all, you have to cancel mortgages and rent and stuff like that. And you have to just say everybody has a right to live in their home. Here you go, right? And have some way to publicly administer that so it doesn't turn into craziness. Oh, that's my house. I like that house. I'll take it from you. You have to leave the house. You have to actually do it in a way that's not nuts. Homes and land, and allow people to, what I would do is create a civilian corps that would go out and help people, grow their own food, create super sustainable ways of living, how to even cook their own food, make their own food, store their own food, can their own food, right? Stuff like that. How to create, permaculture food forests in their communities. Maybe how to set up hyper local solar panels so that you can get maybe every couple of blocks has its own little solar array, small one that just feeds a couple of blocks, right? Super decentralized energy type stuff. I don't know how that would work, but I'm just spitballing. North says, all the climate change purporters in the 90s said if we don't change now, it will be more painful to change in the future. Welcome to the pain. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, does anybody remember how hard organizations like Earth First and super climate aware activists were just stomped on in the 90s? In the early 2000s, I remember how violently those people were treated. They were like, "No, Jack, you got to go," and all the way to Dakota Access Pipeline, stomping on those protesters, all the way to I don't even know what happened to what's the pipeline in Minneapolis or Minnesota? I can't remember the name. They're trying to squash those protests. The tree defenders in Vancouver. It goes on and on and on. Right? They actually really really wanted to stomp those people out, and it was ultra violence by the state against climate change protesters and activists, and now it's just massive confusion. Nobody knows what's going on. So, all right, guys. Thanks so much. I'll see you tomorrow at the regular time of 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And until next time, peace.